First story. I allowed my new boyfriend to abuse my daughter. Now he grounded her for accepting new clothes from my ex. He took them away, banned her from seeing her friend, and made her miss her school orientation as punishment. I supported him then, and now I regret ever loving him. I don't know what happened to my previous post. It either didn't submit properly or vanished, so I'm trying again. I'm in my early 40s and divorced. My daughter Alara is 14, turning 15 soon, and she'll be starting high school in September. Where we live, schools barely have a dress code. As long as the kid is clothed and not wearing something outright offensive, the school doesn't care. I know this for a fact. This matters because over the past year, Alara has developed a very specific sense of style that I strongly dislike. She's gotten into darker clothing, layered outfits, heavy boots, ripped tights, oversized skirts, and things that look deliberately odd. It's not revealing, it's not sexual, but it's not what I'd call normal everyday clothing either. It looks intentional in a way that draws attention, and I don't think that's appropriate for a kid her age, especially going into high school. Her father and I have been divorced for years. We share custody, but Alara lives primarily with me. About a year ago, I started dating my boyfriend, Mark. He's in his late 40s. He doesn't have kids of his own, but he's very firm about expectations in a household. He moved in a few months ago. From the beginning, Mark and Alara didn't really click. He's the kind of person who notices everything. The way someone sits, how they talk, how they dress, and how they respond when spoken to. He doesn't like backtalk or eye-rolling. He doesn't like sarcasm from kids. He doesn't like sloppy presentation, as he calls it. At first, it was small comments. He'd tell Alara to pull her shoulders back and stop slouching. He'd tell her to take her headphones out at the table. He'd comment that her clothes looked sad or messy. Once, when she came downstairs in ripped tights and a long black skirt, he said she looked like she was trying too hard to be strange. Alara didn't say much back, but I could tell it bothered her. There was an incident a few months ago where she gave him an attitude over being told to redo a chore, and he took her phone for the evening. I hesitated, but I backed him up. I didn't want to undermine him, and I didn't think losing a phone for a night was extreme. Since then, things have been tense. As her interest in this style grew, she started modifying the clothes she already had. Cutting holes in tights. Layering dark shirts under lighter ones. Wearing boots that were clearly falling apart because she thought they looked better that way. When that didn't satisfy her, she started using her allowance to buy clothes from secondhand shops. Long skirts. Chunky belts. Dark sweaters that looked 3 sizes too big. Shoes that looked like something you'd wear to a concert, not to school. I told her to stop. She didn't. I took the clothes and stopped her allowance altogether. Mark agreed with me and said if she wanted to look different, she didn't need to spend money to do it. She was upset, but things stayed relatively calm until summer. Alara spent most of last month with her father. That's normal for us during holidays. I won't pretend I love how permissive he is, but I don't interfere with what happens at his house. When she came back, she arrived with 2 large suitcases. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then I started unpacking laundry and realized almost none of the clothes were things I recognized. Combat boots, platform shoes, floor-length skirts, dark dresses, layered tops, belts with chains. Everything she'd been asking for over the past year and had been told no to. I asked her where all of it came from. She said her dad and his wife bought it for her. She said they took her shopping and let her choose what she liked. She said, "They actually listened to me." Mark was standing in the doorway during this conversation. He asked to see the clothes. Alara hesitated, but I told her to bring everything out. He went through it piece by piece. He didn't raise his voice, but his comments were blunt. He asked why she wanted to look like this every day. He said it looked like costume clothing. He said kids who dress like that do it to get attention. At one point, he said she was making herself look like a freak, and that she wasn't going to do that under our roof. Alara started crying. She said the clothes weren't hurting anyone. She said plenty of kids dress like this, and that the school doesn't care. She kept repeating that part, about the school. Mark said it didn't matter what the school thought. He told her to bring trash bags. She refused. I told her to do as she was told. Mark bagged all the clothes himself and put them in the storage room. He then told Alara she was grounded for her attitude and for going behind our backs. He said the clothes would be returned when she turned 18, and until then, she'd wear clothes that didn't make her look ridiculous. I agreed with him. Alara looked at me and asked why I was letting him do this. She asked why I was choosing him over her. I told her I wasn't choosing anyone, that this was about expectations and how she presents herself. That didn't help. She went to her room and cried. A few minutes later, I heard her on the phone. She had called her father. Her father called me within minutes. He didn't start polite. He asked why his daughter was sobbing and why she was telling him that my boyfriend had taken all her clothes. I told him exactly what happened. I didn't sugarcoat it. I said she came back with things we had already said no to, that Mark addressed it, and that the clothes were put away. He asked why Mark thought he had any say in this. He said Mark wasn't her parent and had no right to go through her belongings or punish her. He said grounding her and taking things bought at his house crossed a line. I told him Mark lives here and that Alara lives here most of the time. I said he's not some stranger passing through, and that I'm not going to tell another adult in my home to stay out of situations that affect daily life. He said that calling a 14-year-old a freak and taking her things was not handling a situation. He said Alara sounded scared and humiliated. I told him he was exaggerating and that Alara cries when she doesn't get her way. That didn't go over well. He accused me of letting my boyfriend bully our daughter. He brought up past comments Mark had made, things Alara had apparently told him before that I didn't realize she'd shared. I told him if Alara had an issue, she should talk to me, not run to him every time she doesn't like a rule. He said she tried, and I didn't listen. The call ended with him saying he'd be speaking to his lawyer because he wasn't comfortable with Mark disciplining Alara at all. I told him to do what he thought he needed to do. When I hung up, Mark asked how the call went. I told him her father was overreacting. Mark said that was predictable, and that this was what happens when parents try to be friends instead of setting limits. That night, Alara didn't come down for dinner. She stayed in her room. When I went to check on her later, she barely spoke to me. She asked if I was really going to keep her clothes locked away for years. I told her yes. She asked if Mark hated her. I told her he didn't hate her. He just didn't accept everything she did. She turned her face to the wall and stopped talking. Over the next few days, things got quieter, not better. Alara followed the rules, but she was distant. She stopped asking for anything. She wore the same few outfits on rotation. She barely spoke to Mark at all. Mark said this was her trying to guilt trip us, and that we shouldn't give in. At one point, Mark suggested that maybe Alara should spend less time in her room and more time participating like a normal person. I told him to give her space. A few days later, my sisters got involved. The older one called first. She asked me straight out why I was letting my boyfriend run my household like that. I told her that was unfair and that Mark wasn't running anything. She said taking a teenager's clothes and insulting her appearance wasn't normal. She said if a man had spoken to her that way at 14, she wouldn't have felt safe. I told her Alara was perfectly safe and that discomfort isn't danger. She said I was missing the point and that this wasn't about fashion. It was about me allowing someone new to decide who my daughter is allowed to be. My younger sister was less restrained. She said Mark sounded cruel. She reminded me how much I hated being told what to wear at that age and how I swore I'd never be that parent. I told her she was projecting and that being a parent changes things. Both of them said the same thing. Even if I didn't like the clothes, Mark should not have been the one handling it. I disagreed. I told them I didn't see the issue with an adult setting rules in his own home. I told them Alara wasn't being mistreated. She was being corrected. I told them kids don't always get to be comfortable and that letting her walk into high school dressed like that would make her life harder, not easier. They asked if Alara had actually been struggling socially or emotionally. I said no, not really. She's quiet, keeps to herself, and has a small group of friends. They said that made this worse, not better. I ended both calls frustrated. Since then, Alara's father has sent messages asking when her clothes will be returned. I've ignored them. Alara hasn't brought it up again, but she's clearly withdrawn. She spends more time at her dad's now when she can. Mark says that's manipulation and that she's trying to create a divide. I don't see it that way. I see a teenager pushing limits and being unhappy that they exist. I want to be clear about a few things, because I know how these posts go. We didn't throw the clothes away. They're stored safely. Alara isn't being isolated or punished constantly. She still sees her friends. She still has her phone now. This isn't some ongoing daily conflict. It was one incident that people are blowing out of proportion. At the same time, I don't regret backing Mark. I don't think it would have helped Alara to undermine him in that moment. I don't think letting her dress like that every day would help her either. I think adults sometimes need to make decisions kids don't like. But I can't ignore that almost everyone around me thinks I handled this wrong. My sisters think I chose my boyfriend over my daughter. Her father thinks I'm letting someone overstep. Lalara barely speaks to me unless she has to. So I'm asking here, because I do want outside opinions, even if I don't agree with them. Was I wrong to support my boyfriend in taking away my daughter's clothes and grounding her? Was I wrong to prioritize how she presents herself over how she feels about it? Ada. Comments. Comment 1. I'm leaning YTA. But it's more like, everyone's screwing this up except the kid. Your ex sucks a little for buying a whole replacement wardrobe without at least giving you a heads up. That said, he's still her parent, and it's not weird for him to buy her clothes she likes. Parents do that. But you and Mark? Jesus. The suitcase search is invasive. The freak comment is cruel. The grounding is an overreach. And the "I'll give them back at 18" line is the kind of thing guys say when they want to feel powerful in a house that isn't really theirs. Sorry, but that's what it reads like. Not a parenting moment, but a territory moment. And you're letting it happen because it's convenient. You get to be the reasonable parent while he does the dirty work. Then you hide behind, I supported him because I can't undermine him. Why not? He's not her parent. It's not your job to protect his ego at the cost of your kid's dignity. Also, you keep saying this look will make high school harder. Maybe. Or maybe she finds her people and feels confident for the first time. Alternative kids exist everywhere. The difference is whether they have a home base that supports them. Right now she doesn't. She has a mom worried about looking bad and a boyfriend policing her like she's a messy roommate. Here's the predictable outcome if you keep this up. She'll do exactly what she's doing now: detach. Stop sharing, stop asking, spend more time at dad's. And the moment she turns 18, she won't just take the clothes. She'll take her distance. If you want to salvage it, the first move is simple. Return her clothes and set a few practical boundaries: weather, school activities, safety. Second move. Mark backs the hell off and stops commenting on her appearance. Third move. You admit you handled it badly, and you chose keeping the peace with Mark over actually hearing your daughter. Right now you're teaching her that love in your house is conditional on looking acceptable. That lesson lasts way longer than a skirt. Comment 2. YTA. You're treating your daughter like she's an extension of you instead of a person who exists separately from your image. She's old enough to decide how she dresses, especially since it's not sexual, not unsafe, and not against school rules. What you actually object to is that her choices make you uncomfortable. That's your issue to deal with, not hers. And letting your boyfriend enforce that discomfort for you. That's the part that's going to haunt this situation. You didn't just say no. You outsourced rejection. You allowed someone else to tell her that who she is isn't acceptable. You might want to sit with why you need her to look normal so badly. Because if you don't unpack that, what you're heading towards is a kid who emotionally detaches long before she ever moves out. Low contact. Minimal sharing. Polite distance. You won't get dramatic blow-ups. You'll just slowly stop being important in her inner life. I hope her dad pushes for more custody. Not out of spite, but because she clearly needs at least one home where she doesn't feel like her individuality is something to be corrected. Enjoy the last few years where she's required to live with you. After that, she'll choose where she feels respected. And right now, that doesn't sound like your house. Comment 3. YTA. And I'm going to focus on the part you're not addressing. You've created a home environment where your daughter can't relax. Even if you hate the style, your response wasn't, "Let's compromise." It was, "Your taste is embarrassing, and my boyfriend can punish you." You're acting like it was a single incident, but your own post shows a pattern. Comments, criticism, monitoring her tone, taking her phone, and now taking her wardrobe. That's not one moment. That's a climate. Also, the punishment doesn't fit the situation. You get them back at 18 is a ridiculous time frame. That's not a consequence designed to teach anything. It's a flex. A way to show her you can take something she cares about and keep it indefinitely. That kind of punishment doesn't lead to, "Thanks, Mom." It leads to hiding things, lying, and emotionally checking out, which is already happening. And you're minimizing the impact of language. Calling her a freak is not blunt honesty. It's an insult that tells her she's fundamentally unacceptable. The school's relaxed policy matters because it shows her style isn't disruptive in the environment she'll be in. If she gets bullied, you can address bullying. If it affects grades, address grades. But preemptively taking away her self-expression because you don't like how it looks is basically telling her, your comfort doesn't matter as much as my optics. If you want to fix this without blowing up co-parenting and custody, Mark stops disciplining her. He can have house rules, chores, quiet hours, but punishment should come from you. Return the clothes. Apologize for the freak comment being allowed in your home. Even if Mark said it, you endorsed it. Consider family counseling, because she's already pulling towards her dad's house for a reason. Update. I didn't expect my original post to get the reaction it did. I'm not here to argue with people who just want to insult my boyfriend or label him things without understanding how households work or how parenting styles differ. I'm posting an update because a few commenters actually asked what happened next and suggested focusing on what's best for my daughter, rather than attacking adults they don't know. I'll be clear up front. My position has not changed. I stand by my boyfriend, and everything he did had my full approval. If he hadn't stepped in, I would have handled it myself, probably in the exact same way. So please don't frame this as him acting alone or over my head. A few days after the incident with the clothes being put away, Alara started high school orientation events. Nothing formal yet, but meetings, paperwork, and getting schedules. One morning, while I was already at work, she went into the storage room and took back one of the outfits that had been bagged. She knew exactly what she was doing. Mark noticed when she came downstairs. He told her to go change. She refused and said she was going to be late. He told her she wasn't leaving the house dressed like that. She said she'd call her father to pick her up. Mark told her to go back upstairs. She stood there staring at him for a full minute, then walked back to her room. She missed the orientation event. When I got home and heard what happened, I told her she made a choice. She said I cared more about clothes than her future. I told her that dressing in ways that isolate her socially is part of her future, whether she wants to admit it or not. After that incident, it became obvious that vague rules weren't working. Everything was an argument. Everything turned into her testing limits. So Mark suggested writing things down clearly, so there was no confusion. I agreed. We made a list and put it on the fridge. It covered clothing for school days, footwear, accessories, and expectations about leaving the house. No chains, no platform shoes, no head-to-toe dark outfits. It also included general house expectations like no locking doors and responding when spoken to. Alara didn't argue when she saw it. She laughed, which honestly bothered me more than yelling would have. Later that evening, her father called again, furious, saying Alara had sent him a picture of the list. He accused us of treating her like a prisoner. I told him if he didn't like the rules in my house, that didn't mean they were wrong. Around this time, we had a family gathering for my aunt's birthday. Alara wore one of the outfits we'd approved. It was fine. She looked miserable. One of my cousins commented that she missed Alara's creative outfits, and that she used to have such a cool sense of style. Before I could respond, Mark said phases end for a reason, and that it's better she learn now than later. The table went quiet. Alara asked to leave early and didn't speak the entire car ride home. After that, she stopped wanting to attend any family events at all. I also want to address something people keep misunderstanding. This is not about me or Mark hating alternative fashion. This is about patterns. Alara's friends dress the same way she wants to. They encourage it. They validate it. They spend hours online consuming content that pushes certain identities and aesthetics that, in my opinion, are not harmless long term. I'm not saying it leads to something extreme overnight, but it's a pipeline of influence. So yes, we made another decision that people will hate. We limited her social interactions. She's no longer allowed to spend time with friends who are deeply involved in that scene. She can still see classmates at school. She can still talk to people online under supervision. But she's not going out with that group anymore. From our perspective, they were reinforcing behavior we're actively trying to correct. People keep using words like manipulation, as if teenagers aren't influenced constantly by peers. We're not banning friends randomly. We're removing access to influences that push her towards a lifestyle we don't agree with and believe could harm her long-term emotional stability. Around the same time, her grades from the first few weeks came in. They weren't disastrous, but they were lower than expected. Missing assignments, lack of participation. Mark pointed out that this started after the clothes issue escalated. I agree. When kids fixate on identity and appearance, other things slip. So we tighten things further. Less screen time. More supervision. Fewer distractions. Another issue came up when I discovered Alara had been recording conversations on her phone. I found out because she accidentally left a recording app open. When confronted, She said she wanted proof of how she was being treated. That crossed a serious line for me. Trust goes both ways. Mark told her that recording people without consent was unacceptable. She said she needed to protect herself. I told her she was creating problems instead of solving them. We took her phone for a period after that. At this point, the clothes themselves had become a fixation for her. She'd hover near the storage room. She'd ask when she'd get them back. She'd say things like, "You're keeping parts of me locked up." That language didn't come from nowhere. It sounded rehearsed. Mark suggested installing a lock so there was no more temptation or drama. I agreed. The clothes are still there, untouched. But now the door stays locked. Her father, predictably, escalated again. He's talking about adjusting custody. I see this as him undermining our household because he doesn't want to deal with parenting standards at his place. Ilara has started spending more time there when possible, and I'm not blind to what that means. But I'm not going to loosen rules just to compete for affection. I want to be very clear about one thing, because people love twisting this. My daughter is fed, clothed, housed, educated, and safe. She is not being screamed at or threatened. She is being told no. She is being guided away from influences we don't believe are good for her. I'm not asking Reddit to judge my boyfriend's personality or call him names. I'm asking for advice specifically on how to help my daughter disengage from a style and social group that we believe is negatively affecting her without completely destroying our relationship in the process. Is there a way to redirect her interests without giving in and allowing something we fundamentally don't agree with? How do we prevent her from being pulled deeper into something that may hurt her long term? Please focus on that instead of attacking people you don't know. I still believe we're doing the right thing. But I'm willing to hear advice on how to move forward without constant conflict. That said, Ada. Comments. Comment 1. Let's lay out what you admitted. Your boyfriend, not spouse, not adoptive parent, blocked your child from leaving the house, made her miss a school event, wrote a rule list policing her clothes and behavior, and publicly shamed her at a family gathering. And then you escalated into isolating her from friends because you've decided their aesthetic is a pipeline. Then you found her recording because she wants proof. And your response wasn't, "Why does my kid feel she needs proof?" It was punishment. And now you've locked up her property behind an actual lock, like you're storing contraband. You've effectively given him parental power without legal standing. And your daughter is reacting like a kid who feels cornered. Withdrawal, secrecy, clinging to the other parent, and trying to document. Also, she is safe is not the slam dunk you think it is. Plenty of kids are physically safe and emotionally miserable. Your update reads like you're trying to control her out of a personality you dislike. You're calling her friends influences, her clothes an identity, her words rehearsed, and her feelings a script. You're not listening to her as a person. You're treating her like a project. If you're X-Files, he's going to quote your own actions. Isolation from peers, punishment tied to appearance, and a non-parent enforcing rules. You can keep doubling down, but don't act shocked when the outcome is her living with him more and you getting reduced say. Comment 2. YTA. The way you talk about your kid is honestly disturbing. She wears long skirts and dark clothes, and you're acting like she joined a cult. A lifestyle that harms her long term. Pipeline of influence. Rehearsed language. You're not describing a real problem. You're describing your anxiety, and then treating your kid like the enemy. Here's what's actually happening. She tried to express herself in a harmless way. You shut it down. She tried again, and you escalated. Now she's doing exactly what teenagers do when their parent is controlling. She hides things, she checks out, and she makes a second life at the other house. The more you squeeze, the more slippery she becomes. And the friend ban. That's where you crossed into, "I'm gonna make this worse." You cut her off from her support system because they dress similarly. You're basically telling her, your friends aren't safe for you because they validate you. That's a fast track to resentment. Also, Mark, stop pretending people are calling him names. You literally wrote he called her a freak, publicly took a shot at her at a family event, and is the one pushing locks and lists. If he wants to be treated like a parent, he should have done the work of building trust first, not acting like a bouncer at the front door. If you actually want advice, give her the clothes back, let her dress how she wants, and set boundaries that are about behavior, schoolwork, chores, respect, not aesthetics. But you won't, because this isn't about her well-being. It's about you being uncomfortable. Update. I didn't plan on writing this update so soon, or at all. Everything unraveled faster than I thought it could, and I'm not posting this to argue or justify myself anymore. I'm posting because this is where things landed, whether I like it or not. After my last update, things at home went quiet. Ilara stopped arguing completely. She followed every rule without comment. She wore the clothes we approved. She answered questions politely. She stopped asking for anything. If I didn't know better, I would have thought the situation had resolved itself. Mark said it was a good sign. He said it meant she'd finally accepted parameters. I wanted to believe that because it was easier than admitting something was off. The house felt empty, even when she was sitting right there. What I didn't know at the time was that Ilara had already made up her mind. I found out later that she had gone to her school counselor on her own. Not because of the clothes specifically, but because she felt unwelcome at home. That word came up more than once. She told them about the rules, the restrictions, the isolation from friends, the locked storage room, and the fact that Mark handled discipline more than I did. She also showed them recordings she'd made. Not dramatic clips, just everyday conversations that showed how things worked in our house. The school didn't call me immediately. They contacted her father. Within days, I was served papers. Her father filed for an emergency custody adjustment. He cited emotional harm, lack of autonomy, and inappropriate involvement by a non-parent adult. I was stunned by how quickly it moved. I assumed this kind of thing took months. It didn't. During that time, I also discovered something else I hadn't seen coming. I was out running errands when I saw Mark sitting outside a cafe with another woman. Not a colleague. Not a friend. They were close. Familiar. His hand was on her knee. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for a reasonable explanation to appear. It didn't. I asked who she was. He told me it wasn't what it looked like, then got irritated when I didn't drop it. The conversation escalated fast. He accused me of being stressed and paranoid. I accused him of lying. He said I'd changed since all this drama with my kid. That was the moment it clicked that I'd been convenient, not valued. People stared. Someone told us to move along. I walked away shaking and drove home on autopilot. By the time I got there, Ilara was already packing. Her father had picked her up early after the school contacted him again. I didn't even get a proper goodbye. Her room looked untouched except for what she took. The rest stayed behind, like she'd already decided she didn't need it anymore. The court hearing happened a week later. I didn't lose parental rights, but I lost primary custody. Ilara moved in with her father full-time. I was granted scheduled visitation, with the condition that Mark not be present. That condition didn't sting the way it might have earlier. By then, Mark was gone. When I confronted him again about the cheating, he didn't apologize. He said the relationship had run its course. He said the situation with Ilara had shown him what my priorities were, and that he didn't want to be involved in ongoing conflict. He moved out within days. So in the span of a month, I lost my partner, my daughter, and the version of my life I thought I was protecting. The hardest part has been realizing how wrong I was about why Ilara's father supported her. For a long time, I told myself he only encouraged her style because his new partner dresses similarly. I framed it as influence, as indulgence, as him being passive. That explanation made it easier to dismiss his concerns. It let me believe I was the only one thinking long-term. That wasn't true. Ilara chose her style on her own. She wasn't tricked into it. She wasn't copying someone else's identity. She was experimenting, learning what felt like her, and I treated that process like a threat instead of growth. Her father didn't allow it out of laziness. He respected it. I apologized to him after the court decision. He accepted it politely and kept it brief. He didn't gloat. He didn't scold me. That almost made it worse. I also apologized to Ilara. I didn't try to justify myself. I didn't bring up intentions. I told her I was wrong to make her feel unwanted. I told her I should have protected her instead of policing her. She listened. She said thank you. That was it. No hug. No reassurance. My extended family hasn't been much help. Some reached out once, then stopped. Others didn't comment at all. I think everyone's waiting to see what kind of person I become next before deciding whether to stay involved. The house feels hollow now. Not dramatic, just empty. There's no warmth in it. I've replayed everything in my head more times than I can count. I see now how much I deferred to Mark because he sounded confident, because he spoke in absolutes when I was unsure. I handed him influence over my child because it felt easier than trusting her. That's on me. I don't know what my relationship with Ilara will look like moving forward. I don't expect forgiveness anytime soon. Maybe ever. I've accepted that some consequences don't come with closure. All I can do now is stop blaming everyone else. Stop pretending my choices were harmless. and figure out how to be someone who doesn't repeat them. I'm not asking for judgment anymore. I already know where that lands. I just needed to say this out loud. Comments. Comment 1. I'm not going to comfort you, because you don't deserve comfort here. You didn't realize anything until you lost everything. When your daughter was miserable, you doubled down. When did she withdraw? You called it improvement. When she recorded because she felt unsafe, you punished her. When did people warn you? You dismissed them as biased. You only cracked once the consequences hit you personally. You allowed emotional abuse in your house because it lined up with your beliefs. Full stop. Mark didn't suddenly turn into a puss when he cheated. He was a puss when he called your child a freak, when he blocked her from leaving, and when he controlled her body and social life. You just didn't care then because it wasn't aimed at you. And don't pretend you didn't see it. You saw it and approved it. You liked having someone enforce your discomfort so you didn't have to feel like the bad guy. Now that he's gone, you're rewriting the story as, I was misled. No, you were aligned. Your extended family pulling away isn't mysterious either. People distance themselves when they realize someone will sacrifice a kid's well-being to win an argument. They don't want to be next. You don't get points for apologizing after the damage is done. You don't get redemption because the house feels empty now. That emptiness is the cost of your choices. Sit with it. Comment 2. What stands out isn't that you're hurt. It's that you still frame everything as something that happened to you. You didn't lose your daughter like a storm took her away. You pushed her out by repeatedly choosing control over care. You didn't allow Mark influence by accident. You actively endorsed his behavior, Mark to defend it publicly, and punished your child for resisting it. You rejected every opportunity to stop while there was still time. And even now, notice what you regret. Losing your daughter, losing your partner, losing your family's warmth. Not the harm itself. The loss. That's telling. Mark was awful from the start. Strangers on the internet saw it immediately. Your family saw it. Your daughter felt it in her body. You ignored all of that because his worldview matched yours. He validated your fear of difference, so you overlooked his cruelty. You say you'll better yourself. That's easy to say when there's nothing left to defend. The real test is whether you can accept that you were not just wrong, but dangerous to your child's emotional safety. Until you fully own that without qualifiers, but I meant well, you're not changed. You're just grieving the fallout. Your daughter is gone because she had to protect herself. Remember that when you're tempted to center your pain again. Second story. My boss lost her parents and now wants me to adopt her and bring her along to my family gatherings. I can say no, but she is petty and can easily ruin my job. My manager, Wanda, is a director about 5 years younger than I am. I'm 63, also a woman. She has been with our employer for over 20 years, is extremely good at what she does, is fiercely loyal to her staff, and possesses a wealth of knowledge and insight about our specific work unit and about government in general. She is also emotionally juvenile, totally self-focused, extremely needy, and has never had any kind of a romantic relationship in her life. And her completely perfect parents gave her a completely perfect childhood that left her unable to trust any man outside her own family. I am no expert, but I'd wager that a good psychiatrist could probably get at least 2 or 3 dissertations worth of material out of her. Not that she'd ever consult one, since she is completely perfect. At the time I was hired, Wanda was going through some rough times. She had spent her entire adult life living at home caring for her elderly parents, who were both in fragile health and nearing the ends of their lives, so she was under tremendous stress. I had lost my parents some years previously, and I tend to be the empathetic and nurturing sort. I also did not realize at that point just how messed up Wanda was emotionally. I made the huge mistake of trying to be supportive as she dealt with caring for her parents during their final illnesses. I encouraged her to chat about books and theater, invited her to join my spouse, he/him, and me for a couple of concerts, and even invited her to a family Christmas meal the year her second parent died. Understand, she does have family nearby. She has one brother who she barely tolerates and a sister who she adores. The sister and her husband were out of town that year for Christmas, and she didn't want to go to her brother's celebration. So she hinted and hinted until I finally broke down. It made for a fairly awkward gathering, as our family is quite ribald and rowdy, while she is considerably more circumspect. And she made no secret of the fact that our typical holiday was not what she was accustomed to. But she continued to hint for more invitations afterwards anyway. I have worked very hard since then to ignore the hints, which, several years later, are still being dropped on a near constant basis. I have extended no more invitations to family celebrations and have worked with other family members to shift hosting duties elsewhere, because if I am not hosting, then I'm not in charge of the guest list. I have limited outside the office contact to a once-a-year concert and a couple of dinners. My spouse thinks even that is too much, and I don't disagree. However, given that Wanda is my boss, I also don't know quite how to completely exclude her without repercussions. A few weeks ago, she came to my cubicle in a flood of tears with the news that her adored sister is, selfishly, moving across the country to live closer to her children. She sobbed that she is being abandoned, and that I need to adopt her because she won't have any family that she likes in the area anymore. She expects to be included in family gatherings and all concert and theater plans, and also made it clear that she'd like to go with us on vacations. The absolute last thing in the world that I want to do is to adopt my needy, clingy boss and include her in every single non-work activity I engage in. It would unquestionably end my marriage and quite possibly drive me to self-harm. I can't afford to take early retirement, and at my age, I'd never land another job in my profession at my current income. Going to HR is out of the question because there is no such thing in my workplace as confidential reporting. Firing people is nearly impossible due to the civil service system, so I am not concerned about that. But in her position as my boss, she could very easily make my work life intolerable. She has done so to others in our section who angered her, such as by going to HR with a complaint. Do you have any suggestions for how I can establish appropriate boundaries at this stage of the game? Or am I just stuck providing emotional support to this woman until one or the other of us either retires or dies? Update. Allison, thanks so very much for responding to my letter. And many thanks also to all the readers who shared their insights. Both your observations and those of the commentariat were immensely helpful. And while Wanda is still Wanda, I feel as though I have gained a measure of control in handling the situation. As I read and reread the replies to my letter, I realize that a big part of the issue for me has been that while Wanda makes herself very, very clear about what she wants, she does so with passive-aggressive manipulation tactics, rather than by outright asking for things. And because I had a parent who did the same thing and on whose account I spent a number of years in therapy, I am rather more susceptible to that approach than I'd like to be. Your comments, and those of your readers, were incredibly useful in helping me realize how deeply I had gotten pulled back into the same kind of unhealthy relationship that had caused me so much angst when I was young. The first thing I did was to sit down with my husband and explain the whole thing to him. I wanted him to know that I was going to start setting limits with Wanda, and that part of the limit setting would involve casting him in the role of a hopeless romantic who insists on lots of couples-only time. Once we both stopped howling with laughter, which took a while, because Bob is just about as romantic as a box of hammers, he readily agreed to take the heat from me. He's a good guy. So when I put in my vacation request for this summer, and Wanda asked archly, "And where are we going this year?" I chuckled ruefully and said, "Bob is such a romantic that he insists on us taking a mini-moon together every year. And he doesn't want anyone to know where we're going, even our kids." She pushed a little, even to the point of saying she could easily take that same week off. But I basically took the approach you suggested, treating it as a joke, which worked quite well. Then, of course, the pandemic came along, and we had to cancel our plans. But if it worked once, it'll work again. When I started planning a ticket purchase for an autumn concert series that Bob and I always attend with friends, one that Wanda also likes and used to attend with her sister, who moved out of state, I offered to include her for the one performance that we take a large group to. She immediately replied, "Yes, I'll go with you for that one, and then you can go with me for all the rest," to which I responded, "Oh, the rest of the series are dates for Bob and me, such a romantic old guy he is, still wanting to go out on dates with his wife." She pushed a little, but blaming it all on someone else, and especially on someone who is a man, was quite effective. She pretty much already assumes that all men are scoundrels whose only goal is to thwart and frustrate her anyway. Redirection and deflection have been useful tools as well. A couple of months ago, Wanda stopped by my desk one afternoon and complained, "My stupid brother wants me to give my mother's ring to his obnoxious stepdaughter at their Easter dinner. She's so greedy that she'll probably go pawn it. I really, really don't want to go to their place for Easter. I really, really wish I had someplace else to go for the holiday. It would be so nice if only someone else would invite me to their Easter dinner." I just replied, "Hey, did you hear that Fergus in legal sent back his edits on that policy document we drafted on llama herding? He completely changed the meaning of the middle section, and will be in violation of the llama management ordinance if the guidance is released that way." That produced a very predictable response, one that successfully kept the topic of Easter dinner out of the conversation for the rest of the day. It takes a bit of planning to keep a distraction like that ready in my back pocket, so to speak. But there's always some new crisis or controversy looming in our organization, so it's not all that huge of a stretch. And it has been well worthwhile in terms of deflecting Wanda's attempts to manipulate me into including her in my personal life. The pandemic has honestly helped the situation, too, strange though that may sound. As stressful and horrifying and tragic as the pandemic is, the social distancing requirement has been a godsend in helping me establish and maintain a healthier degree of emotional distance. For example, it is essentially impossible at our workplace to get away from Wanda. Even though she is considered a mid-level executive and is eligible for a private office, she insists on having a desk right out in the middle of the cube farm to be close to her people, which translates to being up in everyone's business at all times. When we went to telecommuting, however, that all changed because we're all scattered to our own homes, and Wanda can't do the kind of spontaneous drop by meeting where she traps a hapless victim in their cubicle and babbles at them for half the afternoon. We don't do video meetings either, thank goodness, and it's downright amazing how much more work I can produce in a day now. There are still phone conferences, of course, but for some reason, whenever the phone rings, my dog wakes up and insists on going out for a potty break. It's so odd. I can't seem to talk for more than 5 or 10 minutes, just long enough to cover the business purpose for the call, but no longer, and the minute Wanda goes off on another rant about Easter dinner with her horrible brother, Daisy starts whining at the door, and I have to end the call to take her outside. Of course, I know that at some point, we'll all be back in the office again, and I have no doubt that Wanda will resume her spontaneous drop-by meetings and her passive-aggressive attempts to manipulate me into adopting her. But with the insights I've gained from OMZ, I expect to have no trouble at all in keeping the oblivious meter set to maximum clueless, and just let that manipulation roll right off my back. Thank you again, Allison, for your help in jogging me out of the unhealthy place I had allowed myself to be pulled back to. Take care, be well, and stay away from those immersion blenders. Update. What a surprise to see this pop up again. It's been a long 3 years. Our work unit remained fully remote for over a year, which was glorious. Productivity soared, and even though my unit's workload skyrocketed during the pandemic, we managed to meet our objectives accurately and timely. And remote work plus Bob and Daisy continued to be integral in helping me dodge Wanda and her demands for friendship. In mid-2021, our unit was required to go to a hybrid schedule of 2 days in office and 3 days remote each week. I wasn't enthused about that, but the good thing was that our in-office days were staggered, so that our team were not all there at the same time, and miraculously, my assigned in-office days were different from Wanda's. So even though I'd far rather still be 100% remote, the fact that I didn't need to deal with Wanda in person made things more tolerable. The needy, demanding calls continue, of course. Wanda is a desperately lonely person, and that desperation pushes her to great lengths in her attempts to find or force friendships with others, including her own staff. But that oblivious meter just stayed stuck on maximum clueless, no matter how hard she hinted, and I was able to keep healthy boundaries in place. You've probably noticed the past tense by now. About a year after we returned to hybrid work, Wanda's sister was diagnosed with a serious illness. The sister's husband and adult children were struggling with caregiving, plus Wanda was in a tizzy because she was so far away. So she took early retirement last fall, sold her house, and moved to the city where her sister lives. I still occasionally hear from her. I mostly let the calls go to voicemail nowadays and then reply by email a day or two later. I keep my tone friendly, but not solicitous, and I maintain hard limits on what I share about myself and my family. I am fully aware that I don't have to interact with her at all, but I genuinely feel sorry for her. While I can't solve her problems, I can be kind. And ultimately, I think the world would be a better place if more of us brought kindness to our interactions with others. I am still working full-time, though I am in active planning mode for my own retirement in the next 6 to 9 months. I'm writing reams and reams of process manuals, updating policy documents, and training others in my unit, and I have been asked to be on the search committee for my replacement later this year. Bob, my very beloved and romantic as a box of hammers husband, retired in January and is impatiently awaiting my retirement date so that we can head off on our long-planned meander around the country. After Wanda moved to live near her sister, he reworked our itinerary to circumnavigate that region of the country to prevent any possible encounters. With my enthusiastic support, he's especially looking forward to being away from the landline. Since I don't own or want a cell phone, Wanda won't have any way to call me once Bob and I hit the road together. That is definitely a major advantage to my cell phoneless state. And Daisy the Wonder Dog is still the goodest good girl ever, truly a sanity saver. She even forgave me for exaggerating the frequency of her potty trips to get out of Wanda's interminable phone calls. Everyone should have a Daisy the Wonder Dog in their life. Thanks to all for your comments, and be safe out there. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.